Everyone, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. We are a weekly podcast dedicated to sincere, in-depth investigations into the paranormal, supernatural, and the metaphysical, with a special focus on the UFO topic. We take a sincere, analytical approach, thoroughly evaluating each case and its implications. Our discussions go beyond the surface as we engage with researchers, investigators, and experiencers to explore the deeper layers of their testimonies. We strive for high-resolution analysis, carefully examining evidence, patterns, and perspectives that challenge conventional thinking. If you're looking for a podcast that seeks deeper understanding, you're in the right place. Please be sure to like and subscribe and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. You can also visit us at www.paranormallypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. Thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in tonight. We have a great guest tonight. Her name is Aurora, and she's a retired math teacher from Romania, whose life took an extraordinary turn through direct encounters with extraterrestrials and interdimensional beings. Through meditation and open connection, Aurora began experiencing what she calls our star families. And in recent years, she has channeled those encounters into breathtaking artwork. Her portraits capture the energy, the presence, and the essence of these beings, bridging art, intuition, and spiritual contact. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Aurora, for being our guest tonight.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. This is going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, guys.
All right, Jim, go ahead. Take it from there.
Okay, let's just dive straight into, I think, the first really monumental experience. And was this, what time period did the abduction experience I'm talking about? What time?
Yeah. I am not entirely sure when it actually happened. I just know that I remembered it very vividly 5 years ago. To be honest with you, I'm not sure what happened when I either remembered it or ended up being in two places at once. It was a pretty wild experience. This was summer of 2020. Yeah, I had just returned from a meditation retreat, and my dog wants to say hello. Yes, sorry. And, just going to bed in the evening. Yeah, this is Teddy, by the way. You can't really see him. He's a St. Bernard Newfoundland mix. He's huge. Yes, I love you too. How about you go lie down? Yes.
When you said you don't really know when it happened, just a memory sort of emerged. Do you mean memory sort of emerged, but the memory could have preceded 2020?
It could have. Before 2020, I really wasn't interested in extraterrestrials or anything of that nature the way that I am now. But I always believed that they existed. I always knew that they were around. I just never, did any research. And this event, this experience, Teddy, I love you, but you got to go. Really just started me on a completely different path than what my life was before that. And what really happened was, I'm lying in bed. My husband is already asleep and he's snoring. And I usually fall asleep while I'm meditating. So I was doing that. And my eyes were closed, but suddenly in my mind's eye, I saw this image. I was lying down and there were three little grays, two over to my left side and then another one over by my feet. And then there was a really, really tall one over on my right side. And so it startled me and I opened my eyes. Well, when I did that, the image didn't go away. It was very strange because I could see my bedroom and this other, wherever this was, with the ETs, with the grays, were sort of transposed on top of it. It was like two things happening simultaneously.
Could you see the bedroom in your mind's eye before you opened your eyes? Or what did you see? Just the beings when you had your eyes closed?
Yeah, when I had my eyes closed, it was just the beings. I remember the first thing I saw was their faces. I don't remember seeing any sort of detail in the background when I had my eyes closed. And I really couldn't get a sense of where I was or what else was around me. All I knew is I was lying down. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed. I could move my eyes. That's about it. And I didn't get a sense of what else was around me aside from these beings. I was terrified, absolutely terrified.
It's like suddenly,
yeah. I mean, it was just out of the blue. It totally unexpected because I didn't, like I said, I had no real interest in extraterrestrials before this happened. So I'm not sure what triggered this memory. It's quite possible that during meditation, I go to these silent retreats for like 10 days, 20 days, 30 days. And the retreat that I came back from was a particularly intense one because it was during COVID and we were really isolated and, meditating by ourselves. And I think that might have triggered something, dug something up in my subconscious while I was meditating. And then it just sort of made its way to the surface.
Why don't you go into that experience and cover that experience, and then we'll jump back to this abduction experience.
The meditation experience?
Yeah, if you feel like it does bear upon this, maybe.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I have had a number of experiences since then during meditation where I have had beings come and visit me. They're in my meditation. They are helping me with my meditation. I used to get panic attacks during meditation, only during meditation. I didn't have them in real life. And there was this mantis being that I had befriended, and he started showing up. And I remember feeling this panic attack rise and thinking to myself, I should probably get up and go for a little walk and just sort of let things settle down. But before I could do that, this mantis being showed up. And as I fell, it was almost like I was falling off the edge to panic. And he said, "Gotcha." Like he caught me. And in that instant, as if he flipped a button, my terror turned to this overwhelming sense of being loved, of compassionate love. It was unreal how intense it was. And I know myself, pretty well, just, from meditating. I do not generate those emotions spontaneously like that, all on my own. So I know it wasn't me. It was not a byproduct of meditation. This being actually showed up. And from that moment on, I no longer had panic attacks during meditation.
Wow.
And it changed me. Another time when I was at the meditation center, and I think this happens a lot there because the atmosphere is so peaceful and there are no distractions, like at home. I've had experiences at home, but the ones at the meditation center seem to be a lot more intense. I was meditating and I felt like somebody was downloading the contents of their computer into my mind. It was just overwhelming, this flow of information that came primarily in symbols. And I've tried to draw them since then, but I haven't been able to. They looked more like Chinese or Japanese characters as far as, the script goes. But it was just thousands and thousands, and just massive. And
wow. So that's.
Yeah, it was. And I was meditating for about an hour, and this went on. I had this download lasted for about an hour. It was, my state of being was very enjoyable. I was very calm and, feeling very peaceful and open. It was a lot of compassionate love that came along with these symbols. But it was just not my normal meditation, where I sit there and I observe my breath and, the sensations in my body, which is, what the practice is. It's a form of insight meditation. In any case, what is it? It's called Vipassana meditation.
Okay. But what was the vividness of this experience? The symbols, was it typical mind's eye vividness, which isn't that very vivid? or how did you? What was the experience like as far as the imagery and the clarity?
The imagery when I was receiving the download, you mean?
Yeah, the symbols.
Yeah, they were gold symbols. It literally felt like they were pouring into my head. They were coming from someplace up above. At least that's how I perceived it. And they were golden. They were like made of gold, literally, like the metal, so to speak. But it's not so much the visualization that I have is not necessarily what actually happened. It's just my perception of that experience. And those symbols to me felt like they were made of gold. Excuse me for a minute. Teddy, shh. It's thundering outside. He's barking at the thunder. Be quiet and go lie down. So this feeling of, gold is warm. It feels warm. It feels precious. It has value to it. So those were the attributes that I was assigning to these symbols that were pouring into my head. When I went home from that experience, all of a sudden I started, Teddy, please stop. Lie down. Go. Sorry, I'm the only one here with my dog. Otherwise, my family would take him. They're about to come home in about, 15 minutes or so. Go lie down. It's okay. When I went home, all of a sudden I realized that I was able to remember how telekinesis. It's like I was beginning to remember that I used to know how to do that in a different body, in a different form. And so I started practicing. I started looking into it, and I discovered, a few videos on YouTube there's a lot of people who practice telekinesis. And I got this idea to make a psi wheel, which is just like a pin, a regular pin, and you take a little piece of aluminum foil and you fold it, you put it on top of the pin. And if you concentrate, you can make it spin. And the first time I made it spin was pretty spectacular. I could not believe, for the first time I recognized that I actually affected it. But I thought, you know what? Maybe it was just the wind, maybe the AC. The fan was off. I had a mask on because I didn't want to breathe on it. I really, really wanted to make sure that I was the one who actually did it. And eventually what I did is I covered it with this glass jar. So there was no way, there was no more wind. There was nothing influencing it from the outside. And when I was able to start spinning that, it blew my mind. It literally blew my mind. There are people on YouTube that you can see, and they're much more skilled than I am. But for me, as a regular person who I had no interest, no desire to pursue any of this, it just sort of came up. And so I started looking into it, and I realized that all of us can do that. Now, I wish I could do that with all the dust in my house, make it all disappear, or, put the laundry away. That'd be great. But it doesn't work that way. And it does require, at least for me, it does require concentration and just be able to focus. Yeah, focus and intention.
Intention.
Those are very important.
Do you think belief is also a requirement that you have to know
Yes.
it's possible? And if you don't, or if you have some doubt, do you feel like any element of doubt or any degree of doubt would?
Yeah, actually, when I was my husband was the first person I wanted to show this to, and because he didn't believe me, there was for a long time I couldn't. I could do it when he wasn't in the room, but if he showed up and I wanted to show him what I was doing, it wouldn't move. Eventually, I figured it out, and I didn't care of his opinion anymore.
Right. So, hasn't sort of changed your state of consciousness and maybe made you feel self-conscious or like afraid, maybe, or doubt, I'm not
under pressure to perform.
Yeah, and so that.
Now, speaking of performing, the message that I got after this happened was that this was not meant to be a parlor trick. In other words, the reason why I developed that ability, or that ability was opened, was because I was supposed to use that for healing. And it had to do with moving energy throughout the body. And there was an Arcturian guide I had. It was a female, and she would literally step into my body and move my hands, and I could feel her. Her center and my center were right on top of each other. It's like we shared the center. And then obviously she wasn't in physical form, but her energy, her intention, I guess her energy body, you could say it. She did not override me. I was still, sovereign and in control of my body. But if I allowed myself, she would actually move my hands in the way that she taught me. And for a while, she stayed with me. And first, I learned how to do that on my own body. And then I started practicing on my family. And the first one that I did was my mom. She has fibromyalgia and chronic pain and a lot of autoimmune diseases. So she's in a lot of pain. She has a lot of chronic pain. Mm-hmm. And the first time that I did this for her, it was just like 20 minutes. I was listening to music. My Arcturian guide was there with me. She was pain-free for almost a week. She couldn't believe it when she got up. But it was temporary. It didn't fix anything. It was just a matter of realigning her. But because she has some ingrained habits, she's, has a tendency to think in more negative terms. I think that she just basically reverted back to the way that she was before this, treatment, I guess I could call it. I call it Arcturian Reiki. And because I don't know what else to call it. And it feels like I'm moving energy inside a person's body. And it's all about basically untying knots, the tension that we hold when we are reacting to something, when we don't like something. There's, a lot of people feel it in their chest. Some people feel it in their shoulders with this tension. And so to me, what it felt like I was doing is literally just moving my hands through a person's energy field, their energy body, and untying these knots. I don't know how that works. I really don't. I just know that it does. And eventually my Arcturian guide, I guess she decided that I knew enough, and I haven't seen her since. And I'm still practicing this, just on my family. Mm-hmm. I don't go out. I don't have like a clinic or anything like that. And that's not the sense that I'm getting that I should be doing with that.
Mm-hmm. So, in what manner did she move your hands? I'm just curious. Did you demonstrate? Was it interesting in any kind of way or unusual? The movements. Yeah,
it was like I was like with my hands, it was like I was manipulating things. And there were certain shapes that I would make and like draw energy from above, move energy aside. It was
as if there was something that was invisible that you were manipulating.
Yeah, it looked like I was manipulating, but it wasn't anything like contorted or anything like that. Not like a mudra or a specific hand gesture. It was just, things with just my fingers, pulling things out, taking them apart, moving them around. The whole point of it was to rearrange, to reintegrate whatever energy was there, which is very different from other healing practices where they try to take stuff out and get rid of it. And this is not like that at all. It was very different. The way that I understood it is even if there is something negative in the body, it's still in the energetic field of the body. And so when you take stuff out, you're basically removing that person's energy. There is no parasite that can really attach itself to an energy field. What happens is our energy field becomes that part of our energy field, becomes entrained with whatever this negativity is. And so it's our own energy that is working against us because it becomes entrained with something negative. And it's a matter of just breaking that apart. Basically, that resonance, just, it's a dissonant resonance to our body. That's why it hurts. That's why it makes us ill and so on. And so it's not a matter of removing it from the body. It's a matter of reintegrating it and readjusting that frequency and the resonance. Every person has their own resonance. They have their own frequency. And it wasn't for me to give them back their frequency. It was just a matter of untangling things, of loosening things up. So if that person was relaxed and believed that what I was doing was healing, and my mom could feel it, she could tell, she could actually feel it. When I stopped, their field would just congeal back to the optimum frequency that they were. So I really wasn't doing anything for them other than untangling or loosening up this energy that was just stuck. And it was interesting because I thought at first, that's what I thought. I thought that I was supposed to pull stuff out. And she said, no, no, no. Because I had seen other people doing Reiki. I had a Reiki session, and I know there's some other practices. I know I have an Indian friend who practices, I forget what the name for it is, but in any case, she removes energy and basically throws it away. And so I thought, oh, energy work. Yeah, that's what you do. But she told me, no, you don't want to do that. And she explained why. And it made perfect sense to me.
And this was the Arcturian that told you this and explained it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, this kind of notion, I think is very widely held, that you got to expel the negative energy, breathe in positivity and out the negativity and get rid of it.
Yeah. It works for some people, obviously, otherwise people wouldn't be doing it. But not everybody operates the same way. That's why, at least this is the way that I understand it. That's why there are so many different healing techniques, because ultimately the person themselves heals themselves. And the healer only facilitates that healing. Our bodies know how to heal themselves if we only allow that to happen and we don't hang on to negative energy for whatever reason, trauma, or it doesn't matter. Negative energy accumulates just living here and eating this food. You accumulate stuff in your body that's really not supposed to be there, or it doesn't resonate.
And perhaps it's temporary because, as soon as you're done,
she couldn't maintain it. She couldn't sustain it.
Environment and other people's energy.
Yeah. Plus, she also has, like I said, she has a tendency to think a little bit more negatively about things. She has depression, she has anxiety, and like I said, she's not in good health. But the fact that she was able to be pain-free for almost a week was spectacular. And I told her, we could do this again, but you're going to have to also do some things by yourself in order to maintain this, because I can't do it for you. The person has to take responsibility for their own healing. My job was just to sort of unclog things, loosen things up, and just create a positive environment where her own energy field could just settle back into its, optimum state. But, it lasted for as long as it did. Every other person that I've worked on, my husband, he benefits a lot. He had surgery, and he really, it really helped a lot with the pain. But surgery, the body has to heal. So that was temporary. But what comes with it is not just the energy, untangling the field and loosening things up. There is also energy that comes out through my hands that is not mine. It comes from someplace, and it feels very loving. There's this compassionate love that I feel is coming out of my hands involuntarily. I'm not doing anything particular.
Okay, that's interesting. I was just about to say, when you were saying, you're just facilitating the healing, the person's doing the healing themselves. And I was about to say, so you're not transmitting, therefore, any healing energy, anything but then what is this, though, that you're now describing, this energy?
This energy that's coming out of my hands, it feels like compassionate love. Like when I was in meditation and that mantis being showed up and turned my terror into these feelings of compassion, love that I know I wasn't generating. They weren't coming from me because they were way too intense. I thought they were coming from him. But now this is also happening while I'm doing this healing. And I have to be in the right space in my own head, because if I'm agitated or too tired, it doesn't work. I have to be in a space where my own energy field is sufficiently calm for this to actually come through.
Doesn't work at all. If you're tired, it shuts completely, not like dwindles.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it doesn't work. And I wonder if I'm tired and I do something like that, if maybe that even makes it worse for that person. I don't know. I've refused to do anything like that if I'm not feeling like I'm 100%.
And so many people live their entire lives, in a tired, fatigued state all the time, and that might who knows, in many instances, the kind of main sort of inhibiting factor, is you're not getting enough, you don't have enough energy. You're maybe, deficient. I think that, you can get into an energetic state where you're deficient and you're sucking energy rather than putting out energy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like a regular person, it's I get upset, I get angry, I get mad at my husband. Every now and again, I even yell at him. So, there's nothing all that special about me. It's just every now and again when I guess it's needed in my family, I just do this for them and it works. I did try it on a few friends. I have done that and it has worked for them as well. But I don't, go out there and actually offer it as a service for anybody. I'm not sure what more I'm supposed to do with it beyond this. I sort of get the feeling that it's important for me to keep practicing so I don't lose the skill, because it'll come in handy later for something else that I don't know, something at a larger scale. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, I could speculate, but I don't know for a fact whether or not, something of that nature is going to happen in the future. Something about something new.
Yeah. Okay. We can maybe get into that if you have any more details to share later on. Let's circle back to the mantid being experienced. And so this was the initial experience when you were first kind of...
with the mantis at the meditation?
The meditation, yeah. And this was in the mind's eye. And did you see the mantis in this particular experience?
Oh, yeah.
And this was the
I've actually seen him a couple of times. And no, this was not the first time. The very first time that I saw him, I was actually on my balcony watering my flowers, minding my own business, listening to music. And suddenly, out of the blue, this face, this really wide, it was a kind of light brown face of a mantis showed up in my mind's eye, clear as could be. I mean, I had my eyes open, but I could definitely see him in my mind's eye. And he had his mandibles open. It literally looked like he was coming to bite me, because I mean, they're insectoids. They look a little strange. And
just typically to a human kind of appear frightening, to us.
Yeah, I mean, it was startling, but at the same time, he emanated this feeling of compassionate love and acceptance and unconditional love. And it was beautiful feelings that he was just generating. And so this is how I know that it couldn't have been my imagination, because under normal circumstances, I would not associate that image with those emotions. And it turns out that with the mandibles, what he was doing is he was actually smiling. He was smiling at me. Now, for me, I need to make sure that you guys understand that what I see in my mind's eye doesn't necessarily mean that's what the being looks like. Because everything that I perceive through my own frame of reference, through my own conditioning. And I realized that after the event that I started to talk about at the very beginning, that sudden flashback or whatever that was, where I thought I was surrounded by 4 grays, 3 little ones and 1 tall one. And when I tried to draw the one who was over to my right, the tall one, I didn't draw a gray. I drew a mantis, but I didn't see a mantis at that time. And it's because I had no concept of a mantis being at that time. It was the very first experience that I had. So, even with my artwork, I tell people, this is what this being feels like to me. I mean, I have imagery in my mind, and I have drawn things that people have recognized, visually recognized. And so I know, there's something to that, but I feel them more than see them. I feel their vibrations with my body, and those vibrations translate into images in my mind's eye. That's how I've noticed it works for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's get into that experience, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the mantid being, and maybe if we can bring up, are you able to bring up a picture of the mantis?
Yeah, if you guys, I can bring up. Oopsie, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Let me see. I can. Let me go into my files here, and I can get them up. Yeah, I have drawings of them. That link that I sent you to my Google Drive. That's. Let's see if I can find the mantis that I'm talking about. There he is. Okay, so I'm not sure how to share my screen. Oh, it says present. Is that what I should click and see what happens?
Yep.
Alrighty. And I'm going to present an image. And that image is going to be, let's see. Here we go. I clicked on it. I'm not sure why it's not popping up.
It's coming. I got it on my side now.
Oh, I see. Oh, there he is. Yeah. Yeah, this is a chica. This is the being that I saw on my balcony. And that's exactly what I saw. Exactly. The color, everything, except his mandibles were open.
So that is not at all sort of artistic rendition of it. That is exactly what you saw.
This is what I saw. And when I look at this drawing, it makes me, it reminds me of that moment and how he felt to me. There was this, like I said, these waves of emotion and energy, and that's what the background pretty much is all about. But he felt insectoid. They have a very different feeling. They feel very differently than, Greys or Arcturians or anyone else out there. There's this vibration about them, sort of like this buzzing. And I think that's why we perceive them as insectoids. At least that's how it works for me. But he is just unbelievably loving and empathetic and just wise. And what's interesting is once I started to perceive this mantis being, I got curious and I was looking for other experiencers who had known mantis beings. And I was so happy to see that a lot of the things that I was experiencing, other people were perceiving as well. This emotionality that they have that is just overwhelming, positive. So,
Aurora, let me ask you this question quick. When you do your meditation and you open that door, is it then that they choose you? Or are you choosing them in a sense?
I am actually not choosing anything. What I do when I meditate is I just basically allow and accept whatever is happening in my body. And when I get to a place where I no longer feel my physicality, I feel like I feel my energy field. It's like there's no longer fingers and toes. It's just an energy field that ebbs and flows. And so when I get to that place, it's a way. It's like I feel connected to everything. And if there is something that or someone who wants to communicate with me, they'll show up. But I don't intentionally call out for anyone. When I sit down to meditate, I set my intention and invitation. If anybody wants to come, I'm available. If you have something positive to say, if not, take a hike. Because I don't deal with the negative beings. I've never been approached by a negative being. But yeah, I don't seek them out. They basically, I just get in the state, and if there's anybody who wants to come, they just do. So it's not like, like Bashar, for example, he intentionally channels a specific being. I don't do that. I basically just invite, and whoever shows up, shows up.
Okay.
And yeah, it's interesting who shows up every now and again.
I'll say.
Yeah.
Let's go into the abduction experience, and there was communicated by this. I mean, it was a brief communication, I think.
It was.
Let's go back to where we left off.
Where I left off in my bedroom.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, like I said, I'm opening my eyes. I still see these three little grays. They had some instruments in their hands. They were about 3 feet tall. No, maybe 4 feet tall, and they had. I want to say it was a dark blue grayish uniform that kind of went up like a little turtleneck, and they looked exactly the same. And what really freaked me out about them is that I couldn't feel them. They seemed to be, they were biological, but they didn't feel alive. Maybe they were, I don't know, those little robots I've heard about that the Greys create. I don't know. But at the time, what freaked me out about them the most is that they had no emotions and they were very task oriented. And there was nothing that I could say or do to stop them from doing whatever it is that they were going to be doing. Nothing hurt. I remember. Go ahead.
Did you say things to them and which they didn't respond?
I couldn't.
You could.
I couldn't speak, but I could feel them emotionally. It's like I looked at them, and of course, they had the black eyes, very, very just typical Greys with the black eyes and the gray faces and no expression whatsoever. I don't remember seeing a nose or a mouth, to be honest. The eyes were, predominant.
We have a picture actually of the ones that's a drawing of someone who witnessed the ones in the turtleneck. We could bring that up, Todd. Our great.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's actually one of the occasional sort of outfits that they are seen in. Normally it's a black turtleneck.
It might have been. It was very dark. It looked like dark blue or black or gray. It was not an easily identifiable color for me at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And it could have been blue, there's a lot of variation,
I don't think, for me at least, it didn't look completely black.
Jim, where was that at?
In our alien drawings folder, there's a subfolder in there called Grace, I think.
Okay.
And there should be
that's pretty neat.
Of the
it's nice to get confirmation of stuff.
Yeah.
Every now and again, yeah.
It was entirely form-fitting,
Yes,
loose.
Exactly. Yeah. I didn't see any zippers or buttons or anything. It was just
no symbols or anything.
No. Mm-hmm. Now, they had some instruments in their hands, although to me at the time, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Jetsons cartoon. They looked like something out of the Jetsons cartoon. I don't know what they were. Probes of some sort. I have no idea.
So I'm imagining like pronged things with like circular kind of.
The thing that, it was there were things that were more long than round. The one thing that I remember very clearly is the one little guy over to my left, he put something through my arm, through my biceps. And I could feel the pressure of something going in, but it didn't hurt, which is what leads me to believe that maybe this was just a memory. I don't know. I honestly still don't know if it was a memory or if it was live, but it didn't hurt. It did freak me out though. It really did. Oh, that's exactly it. Except I didn't make out a mouth or a nose, but the turtleneck, yes, it wasn't ribbed. The ones that I saw were completely plain. I didn't see them ribbed, but that's what they look like. For me, their heads were a little bit wider, but that's exactly what they look like. See, with the mouth, this guy actually has an expression. What I saw had no expression at all. I think that's probably why I didn't think they had an expression, is because I didn't see a nose or a mouth. It was just the eyes. Yeah, if I cover up the image on my computer, that's what I saw. And the eyebrows weren't quite as protruded as you see in this image.
But there was kind of protruded sort of ridge above the eye, like some people describe. Above the
yes, eye. They do. It's like their occipital orbs, they sort of stick out. Like you can see there's clearly a socket that the eye goes into. But it wasn't, to me, it didn't seem like the most prominent thing on their face. It was eyes. They freaked me out. Yeah. The black eyes really freaked me out. That's for sure. Yeah.
And they were horizontally oriented.
Just like this.
You see, more
exactly like this, because I've seen other drawings where they're sort of tilted upwards, and these guys weren't. They were horizontal, just like that. Yeah, see, this guy has them tilted upwards a little, and that's not how I remember it. But then again, it also has to do with my own conditioning, my own perception. Because, like I said, the tall one who was over on my right, I could move my eyes. I could feel he was talking to me telepathically. And he was incredibly kind. You don't have to be scared. We're not going to hurt you. He kept telling me, we're not going to hurt you. We're not going to hurt you. You don't have to be afraid. And he was very, very compassionate. But when I turned over and I saw his face, again, blank expression. And it was triangular, bigger and wider, more triangular than the little grays. To me, he looked like a bigger version of them, but he wasn't identical. His eyes were much bigger, relatively speaking, compared to the rest of his head. And at the time, all I knew, all I had seen were the, images that you see in the media, the pop culture of the grays, with the gray eyes and, so that's what I saw. But his face was wide, super wide. And when I sat down to try to draw him, I couldn't make his face wide enough. It just seemed like there's something not right here. And that's when I started to mess around, with the eyes. And even though I saw almond-shaped eyes, that's not what felt right when I drew them on paper. What I drew on paper was a mantis. And he was pretty scary looking.
So it was, in fact, a mantis. And you were sort of distorting it with your perception in some way. And it made it.
Yeah, that's all I had a frame of reference for. Plus, it's quite possible that, I've learned later that they can project images into our minds. So, so we stay more calm, so we don't get, too freaked out. What do they call them? Screen images, I think. I've heard.
Yeah.
Something like that. So that's also possible.
Yeah, I think it's also possible that, it was intentionally done by it, in order to kind of a little bit its appearance. And how did it manifest? Was it, when you saw it, was it very, very close?
Oh yeah.
Their head, inches.
Inches. Maybe a foot. It's like because I couldn't turn my head, I could only turn my eyes. So I saw him from this basically in my peripheral vision, but I saw him very clearly. He was just right up to my head. It seemed like he was hunched over trying to get close to me so that, he could, I guess, well, he wasn't talking. So I'm not sure why he got that close in my face.
The grays do that as well, especially during the staring procedures. Sometimes they're so close that they're actually touching the abductee. The abductee will describe, it's actually, his forehead is in contact with my forehead.
Oh, wow, really?
Which is a peculiar thing.
Interesting. Yeah, it didn't get quite that close. What's interesting, though, even though I was completely terrified by this image, I intuitively knew that nothing bad was happening to me. And I remember at one point I said, you know what? I don't care what you guys are doing. I just don't want to know about it. And as soon as I thought that, like I said, the image of my bedroom was there. And then also this image with these grays. The image with the grays started fading away, became increasingly more and more transparent, and looked like it was pulling away from me. And as this was happening, my terror was going right along with it. And I got to a point where I said, oh, well, maybe I can handle this. And as soon as I thought that, it started coming back. And I was like, no, I can't handle it. Forget it. Now, as soon as that went away, and this is the part that really confuses me. As soon as that went away and I could sit up in bed, because that's the first thing I wanted to do is move, I'm looking out my window and the curtains are drawn. I can't see through the curtains. They're, blue, sort of like denim curtains, but I see these lights outside. And at first I thought it was maybe an emergency vehicle, with the flashing, the red lights and the blue and the white, but there were also green lights. And I thought to myself, emergency vehicles don't have green lights that I know of. And I turned to my husband to tell him, honey, we have some strange lights outside our window. Of course, he never did wake up, but by the time I finished that sentence, the lights were gone. And we live on the second floor in a condo. The lights were much higher off the street than a vehicle would have been. And I did go to the window and I pulled the curtain and I looked, and there were no vehicles in the street. I mean, nothing at all. And if it had been a police car or a fire truck or something like that, I would have heard them leave because it was the middle of the night. You know, it's a very quiet neighborhood. And I don't know what those lights were. They were in a row and they occupied, I would say, about the size of an SUV is what it looked like. Like it was an SUV with lights all the way, you know, from the front to the back. I didn't see any shape. I had no idea what it was. Like I said, I thought at first it was, you know, like emergency vehicles, but they disappeared just like that. What was that?
I don't think anybody totally knows what the function of those lights are. There's some lights that people will see on board the craft that seem to, when stared at, affect your state of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've heard about that. Yep.
Some role to play with that. I think one thing that seems true about the lights that are seen out the window is that bystanders don't seem to notice these. You know, the neighbors don't seem to typically notice the lights, or, you know, you don't hear that many reports of, you know, like a few houses down one night, I saw this, you know, crazy display of, you know, lights. It's usually the abductee, you know, him or herself, you know, that only witnesses the lights. And to me, I think that there's many elements, and I think that's what I want to get into here a little bit. There's many elements of the abduction experience that kind of confuse the line between, you know, reality and internal reality, external reality, and you know, whether the experiences are truly physical in the sense that we know physical experiences as, or
well, I haven't had any scoops or anything like that, you know, the typical physical markings that a lot of abductees talk about. So I honestly don't know. I have had instances where I am, you know, sleeping and it feels like cats are jumping on my bed, and we don't have cats. We have a big dog. Like somebody is like a little kid is walking on my bed. And as that's happening, I'm feeling myself pass out in my sleep. And I'm just literally passing out. It's not falling asleep. It's just boom, just like that. And it's completely involuntary. Now those aren't dreams. That I experienced a number of times. The cats on the bed is what I call it. But I've had very vivid dreams about floating through my balcony door out of my bedroom, literally floating and feeling on my face the glass as I'm going through it.
Describe that further, because
it's creepy. It's a little odd, but that's all I remembered. I didn't see anything outside, you know, my bed. There was nobody waiting for me. There was nobody accompanying me. It felt like I was alone. And I have had other vivid dreams about being in other places and going through walls. At one point, I realized that I was an orb because I was trying to get my parents' attention in this dream, and I didn't know how because I didn't have a body. And I noticed on the wall, as I was getting more and more excited, this blue light started shimmering. I'm going, oh my gosh, that's me. This is my light on the wall. And, you know, it's like I was an orb, and I guess I was like, you know, blue or turquoise aqua color. It was a very, very vivid dream. One other time I was cold. I was sleeping, and I was reaching for the covers to cover myself. And I'm like, why am I not grabbing the covers? And when I opened my eyes, I saw my hand grabbing for the covers, but it was not my physical hand. It was like my astral body. And I couldn't touch it. I couldn't grab it. And I woke up, and then, you know, I came out of it because that was interesting to actually see.
So you saw a hand, and you actually saw something visible that corresponded.
Yeah, it wasn't, you know, obviously my hand is very clear. My hand was resting on the cover on the blanket. But there was this other thing that I was moving, there was something there for sure. I assumed it was my hand because it moved in the way that I wanted to move my hand. And I couldn't grab the covers because there was no physicality to what I was moving. So I don't know if had just come back, probably. I don't know, because I woke up after that. And, I came to senses, and then I was back, in my body fully. So there have been a few experiences like that. For a few years, it went on like that. Not so much recently. Recently, I've been having more encounters as opposed to vague experiences, sensory experiences like that.
Well, before we go into, I'd like to go into those encounters, but before we do, I just want to kind of crystallize a little bit better, where we're going in terms. I really feel like the nature of the experience, the abduction experience, which is the kind of dual sort of like you're seeing your bedroom, but there's this overlay. I've never really heard, me personally, I'm not to say that.
Me neither.
People aren't having experience, because there's just, so many experiences, there's just so much data that, you just could be, missing that data, and it's out there. But that does seem to suggest, maybe there is not, quite the physicality to the experience that many abduction researchers think there is, that it's not happening quite on this physical plane, and maybe I am entertaining this idea that just outside of this physical plane is a kind of semi-physical plane, where we may still kind of have a body, some kind of physical looking body on this plane. And that's where everything, and your consciousness is brought to that side.
Yeah. That's why it feels a little dreamy.
Yeah. And maybe that's why.
Yeah.
Dreamy. And that explains, because there's a lot of other things, people, when they're being taken up by the beam, they notice that something's strange about the environment, like normally there's dogs barking down the street, but it's totally quiet. Everything seems kind of darker. It almost reminds me a little bit of like in the show Stranger Things, how.
Yeah, I was watching that today with my friend. Yeah.
There you're. That's weird.
Yeah, interesting, huh?
Down. And maybe, and that's why, it's so hard to sort of parse, is this physical or not physical? Because that plane is kind of semi-physical. It's kind of quasi-physical.
Yeah.
And does have many, because there's so many things that they do procedurally, on board the craft that just seem concretely like physical processes, physical examinations, going with their fingers up and down your spinal column, or, cutting a gum out, or injecting an implant, into your sinus cavity or what have you. And that may be, the answer to the mystery. It's both, or it's on a plane where, it is not quite this physical plane, and it's not quite non-physical either. It's like an in-between kind of dimension.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the reason why we are paralyzed, sleep paralysis, I'm not sure what the right term for it is that if we freak out like I was, and I started flailing around, I might have hurt them, or myself for that matter. And I really believe that the whole paralysis thing has to do with keeping us safe from ourselves and themselves. If somebody, because we're bigger and stronger than at least I'm assuming we're stronger. They look a lot smaller than us. But I suspect it's probably just for safety reasons. I think it's especially for us, because movement, I mean, I know this from when I meditate. If I sit still, if my body doesn't move, I can maintain a specific state of being, a specific focus. As soon as my body moves and I change my posture, I come out of that. And so I'm actually wondering if having the body be still actually helps us to stay in whatever state that's in.
Unique
thought.
I
don't know. That's just my theory.
Yeah, I'm going to actually write that down, because I'm always interested in sort of new ideas on that. There is dangers as well. I mean, there's definitely accounts of abductees. Occasionally, it rarely happens, but an abductee will get loose on board the craft and will, run to somewhere. And in some of these occasions, they're actually told, you're very lucky, that you didn't, this area, because there's things. There's actually some cases where people have touched things on board the craft that have damaged them, and they had recovered from, and it had some physical symptoms afterward.
Yeah, that does sound reasonable.
So, so the paralysis, could be that. I mean, I would think, primarily, so that they can undertake the physical examination, without you interfering,
Yeah. Now, I think that these abductions, I think there's many different agendas out there, and people get abducted for different reasons by different factions with different agendas.
Yeah, I think
and not all of them are benevolent. But for my experience, the fact that I was terrified didn't mean that what I was involved in was dangerous to me. I think that just as, we are conditioned, and just the way that our physical bodies run, when we encounter something that's very, very different from what we're used to, I think we automatically go into fight or flight, whether or not it's dangerous. Unless that being, puts out some sort of frequency to, generate love and compassion, which is what happened to me with the mantis being. Just because something looks frightening, it doesn't mean that it's dangerous. And, some of these beings do look pretty frightening. Not everybody's warm and fuzzy.
Right. And frightening from our human perspective, and perhaps not frightening at all,
Exactly.
In a different
exactly.
perspective. Anyway, let's get into some. You were talking about additional encounters that you had.
Yes.
These in adulthood and take place post.
Yeah, this is all since 2020. Okay. I've only had one experience in 2014 that at the time, because I wasn't thinking ETs, I attributed that to a visit from an angel or something like that, because it happened right after I was in a really bad car accident that messed up my neck. I had to have 2 surgeries, and I couldn't work anymore. Kind of left me disabled. It triggered basically a domino effect of health problems, and I ended up not being to work anymore. But in any case, I was really having a hard time. I was, depressed. I couldn't work anymore. I lost my mobility for a while there. I was in a wheelchair. I'm not anymore, but it was a really, really rough time. And this was back in 2015. And I remember one morning I'm sitting on the couch, getting ready to turn on the tube and just sort of zone out, like I did every day at that point. I was really depressed. And I felt this nudge. I don't know why, but just go meditate for 10 minutes, 5 minutes, just for a little while. I had this, because I stopped meditating at that point too. I normally meditate every day, but it was just, like I said, it was a dark place I was in at that point, and I probably shouldn't have stopped meditating then, but I did. And I'm feeling this nudge, and it's insisting, it's like, I don't really want to get up. But it kept pushing me. And I finally got up and I went into where I normally meditate. And as soon as I sat down and I closed my eyes, this incredible shower of unconditional love and compassion. It was like, it wasn't just on the outside, like a shower, the water, you feel it on your skin. This penetrated every cell in my body. It was from top to bottom. And it was so intense. I was afraid to open my eyes because I was afraid of what I might see. This being was so clearly there. And what he told me telepathically was much richer than the few words that I heard. What he said to me in words, though, this is not a punishment. And he said it twice, this is not a punishment, referring to what had happened to me with the car accident. And yeah, he felt very supportive and very loving. This sense of it's going to be okay. You're going to be fine. This is not something bad that's happening to you. It's, it'll pass. It was that sort of a feel.
And you
And there,
were and you were kind of thinking that, just to say, because I remember you talking about this in another interview.
yeah,
You were kind of thinking that in your own mind, and he was kind of responding to that.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. I was thinking I was being punished for something. I was just, just my conditioning. But he also said something that, again, I don't know what he meant by that. He didn't use words, but he indicated that, I don't know, the big guy, the guy in charge, was pleased with my progress. Those were the words that he used, pleased with my progress, or pleased with your progress, as he was talking to me. And at the time, I thought he was referring to God, because that's all I had a concept of. And it sort of stunned me. I'm like, why would God care? I'm not particularly religious. I don't go to church on Sunday. I was born a Christian, but I wasn't religious in any way. And so when he was done talking, this telepathic communication, I got this shower of love again. It was so intense. I mean, it brought me to tears. I was bawling by the time this was over. And he disappeared. He was gone. And when I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. And I ran to the phone to tell my husband what had happened, because it was just so amazing to me to have something that positive show up, during the time when things were really pretty dark. So if you fast forward 10, 11 years, I meet Kevin Briggs and his Council of Eight. I learn about the Council of Eight. And as it turns out, the being who came to see me was one of the beings from the Council of Eight. And the big guy that he was referring to was actually the being he's not in charge of the Council of Eight. He's just sort of leader, oversees the council in a way. And when I put those two things together, it totally clicked. And I realized that this had been in the working for a long, long time, much longer than I ever thought. This didn't start in 2020. I just became aware of it in 2020 is what started happening. But
became what?
Aware of this other dimensional intervention or relationships or connections that I had with beings from other dimensions, be they extraterrestrials or whatever. I had connections with beings from other realms. And that's when I became aware of that, is in 2020. If I think back to my childhood, there were a couple of events that happened, but I've been explaining them away as dreams or just coincidences. The two black helicopters that I remember seeing right outside my window that didn't make any noise. How was that possible? And I never was able to figure that out. And then I started hearing stories. Other people were telling about black helicopters that didn't make any noise. And I'm going, oh, okay. Maybe that's what happened. It was another time when I was sitting at my desk in my room and I was doing my homework, and just my body went limp. I could not sit up anymore. And I literally slid off my chair onto the floor and I passed out. And when I started to have the cats on the bed, a couple of years ago, that feeling of falling asleep, going into that really deep sleep, that's exactly what I felt when I slid out of my chair when I was little and I passed out. So, that's an indication that something may have happened. Those were two very strange occurrences that I could not explain away. I mean, my mom took me to the doctor. There was nothing wrong with me. And the silent helicopters, that was really creepy, freaky, unusual. And in Romania, there was no pop culture with ETs. There wasn't anything that, it was stuff of the movies. I mean, we did have Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Wars. And that was about the extent of the sci-fi that made it across the iron wall. That's all we got. But, ETs were in the movies. I had no reason to believe anything like that was happening to me. So I didn't think about it. But I did grow up feeling like I was asleep. It's like, as I was getting older, I remember being around 5 years old thinking, I feel like I'm asleep. This feels like a dream. Increasingly, more and more, it feels like a dream. And eventually, it always felt like a dream. And I remember being concerned with what would happen to me if the person who was having the dream was waking up. What would happen to me if the dream would end? I eventually figured out that I was dreaming the dream. And yes, this is like a dream. And after listening to other speakers, Bashar and others like him, who do bring up this idea of a dream. The spirit is having a dream. This life is, in a sense, a dream that we're having in spirit. That totally made sense to me. And it explained why I felt like that growing up. And I still do.
Yeah.
Aurora, I have a question here. Someone in the comments here, they want to know, how do you think those that had experiences with manids are connected? Why us, and what is our task?
That is a very good question. And I don't know if this is the case with people who are connecting with other species, but there seems to be a I don't know what to call it. It's a family thing. This mantis thing feels like a family. And like I said, I don't know. Maybe people who are connected with Arcturians feel like they're part of the Arcturian family, perhaps. I don't really know. But I feel a very strong sense of belonging to this mantis family. And I don't know why. I mean, they're scary looking, they're insectoids. I have no reason to feel this way about beings who look in that way, but it's the feeling, it's the way they feel. It is so familiar and so comforting. And I think that, especially recently, what I'm discovering is that I am running into more and more people who have mantis connections, more so than other people. It's almost as if we are beginning to find each other. And I'm not sure why, what the purpose is. There's something is coming. I mean, I'm not talking about Armageddon, because I don't go that, down that path. But there's going to be a change of some sort. And at that point, certain things that we're learning now that we don't understand are going to become relevant. That's just how I am perceiving. That's what I am receiving as far as information. If I ask, why am I doing this? You'll find out later. It'll be important later. And that's how I go about it. But there seems to be there's like this magnetic thing happening with mantis beings. But maybe it's just because, I'm part of that and it feels that way to me. I don't know if other people, like I said, Arcturians or Pleiadians, if they feel the same way, it would make sense. But there's a very, very strong connection between people who seem to be connected with mantis beings at a level that's unexplainable.
All right. Thank you. Yes, that,
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
What are you most guided towards? I mean, obviously not the ET or not the Greys, but it does sound like the mantids for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I would say they are probably my primary guides in what I do. I think that they are involved with meditation. I think that they know different meditation practices. The fact that their psychic abilities are so incredibly evolved, to me, it feels like their focus is on, I don't want to say controlling their mind, but the discipline of the mind, in a sense, how to utilize the mind to its fullest potential. That's what I am actually exploring with my meditation practice. And like I said, these mantis beings, they show up while I'm meditating, which encourages me to continue. And what I've noticed in the past few years is that my meditation practice has deepened, where it used to take me more than, almost a whole hour to go into this really deep state. These days, I'm sitting down for maybe 5 minutes and I just go back down into the space where it's just vibrations. It's all just frequency. Everything dissolves. Everything is just this field of consciousness from which everything arises. And it's interesting to experience that. I mean, I'm not visualizing, I'm actually feeling my body be part of that field. And it helps with detachment. It helps me to not identify with my physical body or even my mind. You know, it sort of creates the sense of we're so much bigger than our physical shape. And there is so much more to us than, you know, what we can see, touch, or feel. And that's true of, you know, the rest of our reality all around us. It's just a different perspective. You know, this reality, the physical reality, everything we touch and feel is just as valid as experiencing myself in this field of consciousness as a mass of vibrations. It's just a different point of view. The more points of view we can perceive reality from, I think the clearer the picture becomes. Because ultimately, it reminds me of the story with the blind monks and the elephant, with the monk at the tail at the elephant, you know, says, oh, elephant is like a brush, the one by the ear, elephant's like a leaf or a trunk or whatever. They can't see the whole elephant. Each one of them has a specific part, and all those parts are very different from each other. And then they argue, no, an elephant looks like this. No, it's like this. And it's totally absurd. If they all got together and actually shared what they knew, they would be able to paint the picture of the whole elephant. But we're not there quite yet. We're still fighting over who's right about the elephant at this point.
Right.
Yeah, I think the ETs are hoping we're going to outgrow this stage. And I think a lot of us are hoping that too. I'm certainly ready to move on.
Have you ever heard of Simon Parkes?
That name sounds familiar, but very vaguely. I'm not sure what to associate him with.
So he's a British contactee who had experiences with mantids primarily, but also reptilians. And he had a lot of interesting things. And I can't remember a great deal of that now, but he would always see the mantis, whom he referred to as a mother, a kind of mother to him.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
He would always.
Who was that, Jim?
Simon Parkes.
Simon, yes.
And purple was always associated with the mantis. They would wear purple cloaks.
Mm-hmm. Yes, purple. Yes, that's right. My first drawing, a real drawing of a mantis, when I first, try to get the vision of him, I drew him with a purple robe. So the purple thing is.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah, this was one of my first drawings.
And he also would say that they're kind of like intermediaries in the galaxy. Like they have more kind of like a neutral sort of disposition with respect to the various races, and are sometimes tasked with doing that by other races to kind of act as an intermediate to help kind of solve conflicts.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. That resonates.
Yeah, that's what he said. And,
we have a question from Mr. James Pike.
Sure.
I'm kind of curious about this as well, because you meditate and you kind of converse with these ETs, correct?
If they show up, yes. I mean, I have gone places. One particular experience I can go into where I ended up on a ship with insectoids.
So James had asked, why are ETs here and taking humans? Did that ever come up in any transmission or anything?
The way that I understand it, and this is something that, I mentioned earlier, there isn't just one reason. There are a lot more ETs, or civilizations, I should say, species. Many of them we don't even know about, who are here because this planet is an excellent place to conduct experiments. Look at the variety of life that we have here. It's not like this in other places. And we hear that over and over and over again. They only have a couple of species here and there. But here, there's a huge variety of life. Plus, those who incarnate here are a clean slate. We don't remember anything. We don't remember who we are. So, it's very easy to actually have controlled experiments here, to watch the development. If you want to remember yourself from a different point of view, this is a place where you want to come, where you've forgotten everything and you basically rediscover who you are without having any influence from your past. You can do that here. And that's what makes this place so special. And there are a lot of beings who want to incarnate here. This is not, I know we all want to go home once we're here, but on the other side, there's a lot of them waiting to come. And back to the questions about, why the ETs are taking people, it depends on why they're here. And some are here to help this planet evolve. Some are here because they need resources that have nothing to do with humans. Some are here because they need resources that actually come from humans. And it just spans, a wide range of reasons. Most of them, I believe, are here for positive reasons, that they have, positive agendas to help humanity grow, because we don't live in isolation. Our planet, is part of a consciousness, at least of this part of the galaxy. So if we are still hanging in the lower frequency, we're sort of holding back the class, okay, from moving up, because we're all connected. And there comes a point where, we've been spending many years in sort of a dark place, I would say. And it's just time. This whole area is evolving. It's not just our planet. It's this whole corner of the galaxy is evolving. There's this wave of energy that's been coming from the center of the galaxy. It's not just affecting Earth. It's affecting everything in this area. So, it's a multidimensional thing. Just because we are in 3D, that doesn't mean that what we do here doesn't affect other beings in 5D or 6D or other higher dimensions. So I think they have a vested interest in us evolving, because that will allow them to evolve as well. And it is all about evolving, all about expansion, all about, learning more about who they are. And it's not just for the individual. It goes up to, species-wise, galaxy-wise. It's just, this is all a fractal pattern. Whatever it is that we're going through as individuals, the rest of everything out there is doing the same exact thing. It's the same fractal pattern repeating itself over and over and over again. And for those who believe that the ETs who are here and treat people unfairly, it's upsetting, obviously. There's, immoral things that are going on. You can hear some governments are involved. And I'm not going to go into the conspiracy theories, but just reasonably thinking, there's good and bad. How unfair is it for those people or those souls that they are treated this way? And from one perspective, it's outrageous. From another perspective, that's what the soul wanted to experience. And that's a lot more difficult to swallow, especially for those of us who are very attached to our physical bodies and don't realize that we're here to experience physicality, but we're not physical. And whatever it is that we experience, maybe we didn't choose all the little details, but the big picture we did choose. And I learned that for myself during one of these meditation sessions where I ended up somewhere and I actually was able to plan 2 future lives. And it was the most fascinating process to watch the path split. And I could do it this way. I could learn it the hard way, or I could learn it the easy way. And sometimes it goes 3 different ways. And to actually choose how I would want to experience that life. It was very fascinating. And it helped me to understand that what I'm doing here, all the difficulties that I've gone through, I actually planned for those things to happen. Now, I can only speak for myself, and I don't condone violence, obviously, or immorality or anything like that. But there is something to be said for the story that we want to experience when we come here. At least we put together the outline.
I think it's just demonstrable that expansion happens, from
Yeah.
all of these experiences. And I think that is kind of the intention of our sojourn here,
Yeah.
expansion.
This place is especially special because as a human in this physical body, we can experience rapture and we can experience despair in the same physical body. This physical body is capable of a wide range of emotions, of emotional experiences, from, like I said, the deepest, darkest despair, pits of misery, to rapture and enlightenment. And I don't know that that's possible in other physical forms. I don't know if that's possible. Clearly, a being who is no longer incarnating in physical form and has such a high frequency is no longer capable of experiencing the darkness of despair, but they don't need to at that point. Expansion, the way that I understand it, is about integrating the whole spectrum, the darkness and the light. If we live in a, polarized reality like we are here, and we look at good and bad from a judgmental point of view, it'll seem like, why would I want to ever get to, integrate the darkness? But that's not how it works. It's the whole picture. Darkness does not exist without light, and vice versa. And so to fully expand as a consciousness, we have to experience and include both and integrate and balance. I use the analogy of the keys on a piano. You got the lower keys and you got the higher keys. So you can play beautiful music with the higher notes. But if you include the lower notes, that makes it so much richer and more profound and beautiful and complex. And again, I'm not saying that I'm condoning negativity or violence or anything like that. But the only reason those lower frequencies appear bad is because we are experiencing those lower frequencies as unpleasant. Fear, anger, despair. They're frequencies, literally, just like love and compassion and, gratitude are. They're just different kinds of frequencies. But the way our physical shape is built, when we experience those frequencies that are lower, it's unpleasant. It seems dissonant. It doesn't work for us. We are made of light, and that's why that doesn't feel good. But if you step outside this body and you are able to experience just the frequencies without a specific meaning, that's how you create, is from the whole basket. It's not about good and bad. It's about the property, of frequencies. For example, fear pulls things apart. It disintegrates. If you're going to build something, you want to be able to take things apart and put them together in a different way. We experience fear as a very unpleasant emotion, but the actual mechanics of it, the physics of that frequency of fear and anger and all the other experiences that we label as negative, is to take things apart, to rearrange frequencies in a different way, or matter, for that matter. And I think that the Greys probably ended up giving up their emotions for that reason, is because they are able to use the whole span of frequencies to create the things that they do. I mean, they're amazing genetic engineers, and a lot of that has to do with frequency. I remember reading something about the frequency of DNA. Everything is frequency, everything. Even Tesla said so. It's energy, frequency, and vibration. It's a lot easier to work with the lower keys if you don't feel anger and despair. And I'm wondering, this is just, I'm just, suggesting an idea. I don't know if that's true or not, but it would make sense to me that a species who gave up, their emotionality would be able to work with the whole gamut of frequency and not be affected by them.
Do you feel like that is the case with the Greys in general, that they have no emotionality? Or
actually, there's different Greys. some grays do have emotionality. I met one gray from the Council of Eight that, you've talked to Kevin about. He is one of the shorter grays. He is from the Pleiades, he says, and he has an incredible sense of humor. I mean, he is just funny. And when, when we connect, and we haven't connected recently very much, but when we first started connecting, it was so wonderful to exchange humor with him telepathically, because I could feel why he thought it was funny. Plus, I knew why it was funny for me. And so putting both of those perspectives to get together made it that much funnier on so many more different levels. So, yeah, he had a lot of emotion. I didn't experience any low emotions, but what was that?
And he expressed humor.
Yeah, he did. He was very funny and sarcastic and loves to play tricks on people. I'm not the only one who's interacted with him. Yeah.
That's very interesting. Because
is it because of their looks? I mean,
they call them grays?
No. How they get that they're so very serious and no emotion. When you look at the pictures, like we have one, and they kind of just look like, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna not show it. Or maybe it's because they can't. Who knows? But it is. It's very interesting.
Well, our faces have a lot of expression. We have eyebrows, we have all these micro expressions and so on. So that's what we used to looking for in order to pick up emotion from somebody, because not everybody's, empathetic. So when we see a face that is just so without expression, we immediately assume that there's no emotion behind that.
Sure.
Those who can pick up emotions, empathetically or telepathically, can pick up the fact that there's the face and there's the personality. Like what happened with me with that being who was leaning over me, who was very, very compassionate, but had no facial expression at all. And it freaked me out. I couldn't process. I couldn't put those two together. How could he be so loving and yet look so like nothing?
Right.
It was just weird. It freaked me out. So it's also the fact that, as humans, I think we are conditioned to look for specific things like facial expressions.
Well, sure.
And not all beings have it.
I think that, a perfect example is a mantid. If you look at a mantid, you'd think you'd be scared to death because of how they look, but that is judging a book by its cover.
Right.
And not getting down into the specifics of the mantid itself. So yes, that was very interesting. Thank you.
I would just bring up.
Yeah, I mean, these are just my opinions. I mean, I don't know really what's going on.
That's fine.
I would just bring up Dan Burish, the biologist who was contracted by MJ12 to interface with a gray type entity, and through their communications, it was expressed to him, several times by the gray, like, oh, this is when I have this expression, it means this. There was kind of realization that like the outward sort of appearance of their face is completely misleading, but there are
really wow
emotions being conveyed. Some people say, and I'll just bring up this as well, that not with the shorter grays, the real kind of rubbery sort of small grays that have the sort of facial appearance, but the taller ones, their eyes will move a little bit. Some people say the almond, the very tips of the almond shaped eyes will lower and raise and will kind of suggest some motion somehow. Sometimes their heads will tilt.
Okay.
Impression to the abductee of confusion sometimes, whether it's that or not, though, we really don't know. But there is a bit of facial expression that goes on with some of the taller, more sort of animated.
There are many different kinds of grays out there, is what I understand. And they're sort of all kind of put in the same category because they have the black eyes, the almond eyes.
Mm-hmm.
So pretty much, if they have a small lower part of their face and they have these big eyes, that's pretty much what we define as a gray. But I don't know that they see themselves as belonging to the same category. I'm not sure about that, but yeah, there are many different types of grays, I guess, out there, if you're going to put them in that category.
Yeah.
Different colors too. They're not all gray. Some are purple.
I think the ones where people, when they get a close up of their eyes and they see pupils behind,
Yeah.
that's an entirely different species than people are typically seeing. And some people will say, one of our guests, Laura, mentioned that those ones smell really bad, and there are some gray species that have foul odor.
Yeah, the ammonia ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a friend who had an experience with them.
Grays, though, that most abductees come into contact with, they never describe a smell at all. You never hear an abductee mention about any kind of smell, but there are some, where it's very palpable. And I think it's, an entirely different species. Just one more thing to note about, facial expressions. There are odd occasions too where their mouths will seem to open, and there are some very rare abductees who have seen the gray mouth form a kind of O, like
really.
Yeah, on the rare occasion that has been witnessed by some abductees. I don't know what's going on there or why they form the mouth in that way on the odd occasion, but
well, I think, it's quite possible that they are just as curious about us as we are about them. They see us speaking and moving our mouth and making different shapes. And, who knows? Maybe they're trying to explore what it is that we're doing with our mouth when we speak, the sounds that we produce. I really do believe that, especially if you're, approaching one-on-one, so to speak, with a particular individual from another species, just as we are fascinated by the differences between us, they, I am sure, feel the same way. Otherwise, they wouldn't be reaching out to another species to learn more about. That's, to me, it's how I am interpreting it. Every now and again, I'll be doing the dishes, okay, or putting away the laundry, something very, very mundane, and I will feel one of them asking for permission if they can experience what I'm doing while I'm doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like they possess me or anything, but somehow they tap into the states of being that I'm experiencing, while I'm doing the dishes. And it's hilarious to see how fascinated they are by the simplest things that we consider chores that we don't want to do. And it's really, really interesting. They do every now and again. I'll get one that comes around and just wants to know, what does that feel like to do that? And I can't tell you what species it is. I don't even know if that's a being that has physical shape, but they always ask for permission. And I'm more than happy to oblige because they, it's kind of neat. It's sort of an exchange. They get to feel what I'm experiencing and I get to feel what they're experiencing. And that is really interesting to look at doing dishes with that much fascination and interest. It's trippy. Yeah.
It's a recurrent theme with many different species. If you've ever read the book Abduction, many of those abduction experiencers would get impressions, from their ETs that they were very much interested in the physicality of human life and our emotions and everything like that. I was just reading Intruders, and that was one of the things that Deborah Cobble, mentioned many times, was the way that they would look at her really suggested to her that they were just dazzled by her in many ways,
I believe that. This is a very intense place.
Yeah, she was attractive to them in some amazing regard. But yeah, that's very interesting. So we about 25 more minutes. Is there another experience that you'd like to share that we haven't covered so far?
The one experience. I don't know if you guys have seen this in one of my other interviews, where I was meditating and somehow I spontaneously ended up on a ship with insectoids. That was an interesting visit.
Yeah, I actually wrote that.
I don't know if you want me to go into that. That's
I do want to hear about, because I haven't.
Yeah. This was again, I was just meditating, and without me having any particular intention, I just found myself, and it seemed like it was my astral body. I found myself in what looked like inside a World War II submarine with the peeling paint on the walls. It didn't look very technologically advanced at all, with these gauges that were not digital, just the analog gauges on different panels, and these insectoids were about 3 to 4 feet tall, were facing away from me towards these panels, and I'm not sure what they were working on, but it didn't seem very technologically advanced at all. And again, I don't know if that was just my perception of what I was seeing or if that was actually there, but it literally looked like a submarine, like the interior of a submarine. And I didn't know where I was, but when I saw them, I figured, oh, I guess my body's in my meditation room, but I'm here. And just suddenly, all of them in unison turned around and looked at me with surprise, like, how did I get there? And the next thing is they swarmed me, and I really thought I was going to freak out, but I didn't. It was astonishing. All I could feel was love and compassion. These insects are coming towards me from all directions, and to me, they seem like little kindergartners with the sticky fingers. You know how they're always sticky fingers, and they got boogers and all of that. They're kind of gross. You don't want to touch them, but they're cute at the same time.
That was the kind of that you had, like,
yeah, it's like kind of not the kind of thing I want to pick up and kiss, but you're cute. And so I'm standing there, and I'm not moving. I never moved from that spot the whole entire time that I was there. And they got these little antennas in their feet, and it's kind of weird. And they're touching me, like I said, like kindergartners who are coming to hug you. And I got the sense that they were trying to determine if I was a threat. Once they figured out that I wasn't a threat, they all turned around at the same time and went back to what they were doing. And from their behavior, I gathered that they had a hive mind, because it was like instantaneous what they did. It was exactly the same thing. A few moments later, barely a few moments later, this door opens, and it was oval, like you have in a submarine. And it had, how the wheel in the center. And I remember the yellow. I remember seeing the paint had been peeling off, and there was metal. I could see the metal. That wheel was made of metal. I guess it's to lock the door so that, part of the submarine floods to keep the water out. I'm not really sure. But in any case, the door opens, and this huge mantis walks in. And he had to hunch over because, the door was smaller than him. And he had to step over this ledge, so, to get in the room. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm so glad he didn't trip, because he didn't look like the kind who would laugh at himself. He was really serious. And he heard me, telepathically. He could hear what I was thinking. And he gave me this look that, he was very no nonsense about it. And normally I would be terrified, but I wasn't. Again, I felt this sense of just well-being and harmony. And he was very confused as to why I was there. I suspect he found out, probably through the hive mind, or somehow he found out that I was there from the little guys who had surrounded me earlier. And he said something along the lines of, you shouldn't be able to do this as a human. What are you doing here? How did you get here? It was that kind of thing. It was not something that I should have been able to do as a human being. He was very confused and intrigued by that. Because I really couldn't answer his question, because I had no idea how I ended up there. I was just meditating. What he did next is he opened my mind like it was a file cabinet. And he didn't even ask for permission. He just went in. And he started sorting through the contents of my mind. And I knew what he was looking at. It was as if he was pulling out files. And I was surprised at the stuff that he was pulling out, because I have plenty of negative imagery, okay, of people hurting one another. I mean, it's what it is, the way that it is here. From movies alone.
You were able to see what he was going through.
Yeah, what he was taking out of my mind. It was memories. And that's basically what it was. It was memories. It was experiences, how I perceived experiences. And I could see them. It was like watching it unfold, and he would go forward and backwards. It was the trippiest thing. And all he pulled out was positive stuff. And I was surprised at that myself. Now, I don't know why I said this to him, but I told him, you see, this is who you would be destroying, referring to what he saw in my head. And I have no idea why I said that. Later on, I realized that they were there for some sort of like mercenaries, like somebody had paid them to just do a job. It was nothing personal, but it had to do with, I guess, attacking people or Earth. I don't know why I felt that way, but he didn't contradict me. And what I figured out later is the reason why he picked out only those positive things is because he had been told that the universe would be better off if humans were exterminated, because we were just hopelessly lost and barbaric, and we would never change. So that's why he was there. Apparently somebody had hired him, and that was, I guess, the sales pitch that they gave him. And he was very confused by what he was finding in my head, because I was a human, and clearly I already had done something he didn't expect. I showed up on his ship, and somehow I got in, uninvited. So he was a little confused about that. And I somehow ended up leaving. He didn't send me away, but I showed up back in my meditation room. It was just like that. A few weeks later, he contacted me again while I was meditating. I didn't go to his ship. He just showed up in my mind's eye. And he was pissed. Not at me. He was so angry with whoever had misled him about humanity. I don't think it was people. I don't know. But somebody had told him, like I said, that the universe was better off if we were exterminated. He found out that was a lie. Obviously, he found some information for me, and I'm sure he did his own research, but he was so angry. And he came to tell me that. And then he said, well, this is not your timeline anyway. What do you care? I was like, okay, well, I don't know where that came from. But after he left, I had the sense that he was my dad. Like, as pissed as he was and as intimidating as he looked, and he wasn't wearing purple. He was actually wearing this gray military kind of coat or robe or something. All I saw was his head. And he looked more like a grasshopper than a mantis. His head was a little bit narrower. But he was definitely an insectoid.
Was he like a big version of the little ones, or was he different from the little ones?
He was different. He was a different kind of mantis. But I knew he was a mantis because of the way he carried himself, sort of hunched over. And even though I didn't see his arms, he felt like a mantis to me. But he was an insectoid for sure. And by the way, don't call them bugs. That's incredibly offensive. I found out the hard way. So yeah, don't definitely call them bugs. And when he left, there was this sense of, it didn't matter how intimidating or scary he was, or what his job was, or whatever his purpose was. he felt like immediate family to me, like my dad. And I have no idea how and why that was. He didn't treat me like his daughter. He wasn't all warm and fuzzy and supportive like the other mantis beings that I met. He didn't hurt me or anything, but he totally, trashed my boundaries as far as my, the privacy of my own mind. But it's like I didn't mind at the time. It was very strange, the state of mind that I was in, just really open. I remember when he opened my mind, it kind of freaked me out a little bit at first. And then I thought, you know what, there's nothing I can do about it anyway. I might as well just relax and just let it happen. And that's what I did. And the visit that I had on the submarine was so vivid. There are times when I see things in my mind's eye and I'm not sure, am I making it up? Is some of this me? How much of it is me? How much of it is what's actually happening? But this one, I know for a fact that I was there. Some part of me, my astral form, or some part of me was there. I knew my physical body was in my meditation room the whole time. I was aware of that. And I knew that I could leave whenever I wanted. If anything, were to scare me, I remember being given moments during this event where I had the option to exit and I chose to stay. I'm not sure who gave me the option, but it felt like if I wanted to leave right then and there, I could have. And, they showed up periodically during this entire experience. And I just chose to stay through the whole thing until somehow I ended up back in my meditation room. I have no idea how that happened. And I don't know, I've never heard anybody else talk about anything like that. So
well, I have a couple
weird.
And you might be aware of this, but maybe not. Some of the SSP whistleblowers, I think William Tompkins is one, and there are definitely others who talked about in the early stages of the secret space program, the American secret space program. They used submarines.
No, really?
Because it was just, they already had them built, and because the hull being built to be underwater was already kind of self-contained and everything, they realized that it was really suitable for to integrate with whatever technology, anti-gravitic propulsion technology, and use submarines as their spacecraft. And some people, we've had on an abductee who had a crazy experience when he was younger and was in a schoolyard and witnessed something just coming out of nowhere overhead that looked to him exactly like an upside down submarine.
No way. Oh, wow. Well, that's great confirmation. Yeah. I thought maybe I saw it as a submarine because that was, what my frame of reference was. But what you're saying is fascinating. Dang.
Right.
That's really cool.
It could have been our own government, as many SSP experiencers have witnessed. And many times, there is ETs, maybe contracted, ETs working alongside secret program operatives. The other thing is, I don't know if you've ever heard of Tony Rodriguez, who had.
Yes, I have. And Randy Kramer, too.
Yeah, well, Tony Rodriguez had experience with, I don't know if it was an insectoid of some kind. And I mean, this is a long story. This is when he was deployed on Mars.
I read his book.
Mars. But he had kind of frightening interaction with some insectoids on Mars, at the end of which he was about to be killed.
Yeah, I remember that.
And before he was going to be killed, this insectoid, just like with you, went through all his memories, memory after memory.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They did.
Determined, that he was a good person. And, Tony wasn't, like these other, military people that they had been fighting against, and let him live, and told him that, he was here to love, or something like that.
Yeah, I remember that. It was that was a good part of the story. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Same.
Wow. That's really trippy. I never thought about that. And I didn't know about the submarine, what you just said. That's fascinating. Wow. That's great confirmation.
Yeah.
Dang. That's cool. That's really cool.
It's very interesting too that the insectoid mentioned to you were not even on your timeline. So why?
Yeah.
Implying that you had tapped into another timeline. Presumably.
Yeah, somehow. I have no idea how any of that happened because it wasn't anything that I did, intentionally. But I honestly think that hopping timelines is not as difficult as we think it is. If it happened to me accidentally, it can't be that big a deal, really, because my mind, my abilities are nothing special, really. I mean, yeah, sure, I've been meditating for a long time and I can concentrate, but it's not, like other people who can move huge objects across the room. I'm nothing like that. My mind is nowhere near that powerful. So if I stumbled across it, it can't be that difficult. Seriously. Yeah.
But yet baffling, that this happened spontaneously.
Yeah.
I think my friend Kevin Briggs, if I'm not wrong, had a very similar experience where all of a sudden he wound up in some craft.
Yes. That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Rising just like you did, the occupants. And I think he also kind of had an interrogation of some kind, if I'm not wrong,
he was told to stay out of it. They told him not to interfere, I think was what he was saying.
Right. Yeah. And I've heard that from other people too. Yeah. Like they'll just wind up, without any, intention going on, not intending it, but just suddenly winding up with their, inside the craft.
I don't know how that happens, but I think it has to do with the frequency that we hold because, like vibrations attract like vibrations. And who knows, maybe wherever I was when I was meditating, that ship was nearby. And I'm not speaking in terms of time and space. I'm speaking in terms of frequency. And that's how I ended up on it. Maybe for a split second, somehow I had the same frequency. And that's how I ended up there. That's the only explanation I can give.
Yeah.
But it was not intentional. None of it ever is. For me, it's just interesting. Yeah.
It is very interesting.
Very interesting.
So, Todd, do you have any questions to finish out, or is there any questions that we didn't get to in the comments, maybe?
Polly had one. She said, if love is our DNA, do you think our empathy is used to seed love in hybrid babies? And are they trying to get their feelings back?
That's a good question. I've heard others speculate about that. I honestly don't know. Personally, I have no experience with the Greys trying to get back their emotions. I know that there are several hybridization programs in place for various reasons. Some are not so good reasons. The ones that I am most familiar with are indeed positive. They have to do with advancing consciousness, and with a higher level of consciousness, you really do need to have a vessel that has a higher frequency in order to, contain that consciousness, although it's not, containing it, but it has to resonate. The frequencies have to match for the consciousness to be able to, project a specific body. There are many different ways of looking at it, but from what I understand, as the consciousness of humanity evolves, there need to be physical bodies that can actually accommodate a higher frequency. And that's part of the evolution process. It's not like the hybrids are going to take over humanity. It's just evolution, the way that it's always been. This wouldn't be the first time that hybrids, were introduced in the population. like that. But there are several hybridization programs with so many different agendas. And there are, like I said, there are some that are not, they have a negative agenda, and they're about, using people, and it's not about any sort of positive growth. It's about, more of abuse and taking. But I think most of them are positive.
And we had another one here from James Pike. He wanted to know, what are your thoughts on hybridization programs between grays and humans? And what do you feel is that they're trying to achieve, or an end goal? And does every ET encounter result in a clone of a human or subject?
I don't know that every ET encounter results in a clone. It depends on the ET, and again, it depends on the agenda. I know that there is a group of grays who is indeed trying to create hybrids that, between humans and grays, and it's about, what I was mentioning earlier, about raising the frequency of the physical form that the consciousness expresses itself in. Also, Bashar talks a lot about that. And from what I understand, it's not about the grays regaining what they lost. It's about them continuing on in a different form, their culture, their whatever, civilization, I guess you could call it. And I don't know that they are humans from the future, which is what Bashar says. I don't, like, personally, I don't know. I don't have any facts about that. My sense is that that's what's going on. And I am okay with that, for my own reasons. To me, it makes sense. I don't see an issue with it. But there are a lot of people out there who feel very threatened by the hybridization, this particular hybridization program, when they are creating human gray hybrids. And yes, there are individuals that are created that can't survive. There's a lot of trial and error and a lot of pain that, people have gone through who have had hybrid babies that they were not able to, raise, that were taken from them, and so on. And it's, I don't mean to minimize any of that. And I think there were a lot of mistakes that were done at the beginning, because I don't think the grays realized the extent of the emotional connection that humans have with their children, with their offspring. And from what I understand, a lot of the, babies in the first batches actually didn't make it because they needed to bond. The babies don't survive without physical contact from, a loving caregiver. And, they learn things the hard way at the expense of the humans who had contracts to participate. And I want to emphasize that. The people who participate in the hybridization program, however it turns out for them, that is something that they have agreed to do. The problem is that the grays don't operate in linear space and time. And so you may end up in a hybridization program participating in some way that perhaps in that moment you don't want to participate that way. And then in the future, you agree. At least to us, it appears in the future. We have to agree before we do something. Well, the grays are not so picky about linear time. If at some point you agree, then that counts for the whole thing, from what I understand. And that's created a lot of problems for people, because we do function in linear time. And there were some other things that were related to that, the misunderstanding, the misconception, the miscommunication over how, we perceive things very differently from them. And just like we can't understand how they can perceive time in a nonlinear fashion, they can't really understand how we function in linear time. And a lot of the disagreements and the issues that occur between humans and ETs, regardless of the species, is because we come from very different points of view. And the same way that we don't have a concept for the things that they are experiencing, it's the same thing for them. They're here to learn. They don't know everything. A lot of them are here to learn more about us. And they have no concept of some of the ways that we perceive reality. And, we don't have their technology. We don't have their advanced, spiritual abilities. And I think that's why some disagreements occur because it seems like we're being violated. Our boundaries are being violated. They're picking us off like we pick off, wildlife to number them out in the jungle. It feels that way to us, but I don't believe that the intention is to harm. Most of the time, the intention isn't to harm. Even if it does turn out to be harmful, that's not the original intention. It was just miscommunication or a mistake. That's what I have been told. That's what I have experienced. Like I said, that flashback or whatever it was, I was absolutely terrified, but they weren't hurting me. There was no reason for me to be afraid. And I knew that on some level. Could they have been, a little bit, better bedside manner? Probably, but they weren't, because they didn't know how terrified I was. It didn't matter to them. So that's kind of how I see it. But it's a very sensitive subject, especially lately. The hybridization program seems to really ruffle a lot of feathers for people lately. And there's many of them, many of them.
Yeah, and will continue to do so because of the fact that our children are involved in it. And, humans are just never going to be able to reconcile with that fact.
Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah. And then at the same time, though, like, we're not our bodies, and these children, that are, presuming that there is, contractual soul contracts, that are arranged prior to this, or maybe, as you say, actually after.
Yeah, not necessarily linear. Yeah.
Right. Then, yeah, I mean, it's just, we'll never be able to reconcile with it unless we advance, to collectively.
Yeah. To understand what the physical body really is for, or how it comes to be, and that it really doesn't represent the soul. It's just a projection of a small fraction of our consciousness, actually, especially the human body, because it's got so many limitations. But I think it's important to keep in mind that this is not the first time hybridization has happened. This has been, periodic throughout human development. Even if you look at it from the perspective of, an archaeologist, or even from the perspective of biology, the ways that humans have evolved so rapidly over such a short period of time, from not using tools to using primitive tools to now the technology that we have, it's pretty astonishing, what's been accomplished. And physically speaking, we haven't really been evolving very much. That's not the part that's really been changing all that much. It's just the way that we perceive things. Our minds is what's really been changing very, very rapidly, especially lately. It's really picked up momentum. I mean, I remember how I used to think 10 years ago, and I am no longer that person. I have a much wider understanding of myself and consciousness, and it's all part, I think, I'm not the only one who's going through this whole experience of ascension, I guess we call it, or whatever we want to name it. It is an expansion of consciousness, and it does happen with the intervention of ETs. And I also believe that those of us who are waking up are having our own physical structure, our DNA structure, I think, is being altered in some way or changed in some way in order for us to be able to have the experiences that we're having of this expanded consciousness and the understanding or this psychic abilities that some people develop, telepathy. I never was able to communicate with beings telepathically or anybody else for that matter. And now it's like, it's no big deal. And I don't know how that happened in 5 years without me even trying, So, it's in, it's happening to a lot of people. I really believe it's happening to more people than, they're actually consciously aware of. And I think it's a good thing, but that's just my perspective on it. I haven't been on the receiving end of pain and suffering. So, that's a luxury that's just my perspective of it. Not to minimize.
Your story is so fantastic. And it truly is the way that you communicate when you meditate through your pictures. It's very, very fascinating.
Thank you. I'm glad you liked it.
And we thank you for coming on here tonight.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. And, tonight we talk with Aurora with some extraordinary experiences, from moments of fear and healing to encounters with grays and mantis beings, to the deeper questions of hybridization and humanity's place in the cosmos. Her story reminds us that what may seem strange or even unsettling can also reveal a greater truth, and that our capacity for empathy, love, and connection may be very key to our role in this universe. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thanks for listening with open hearts and for continuing this journey with us. Until next time, stay curious, stay open, and remember, the truth isn't just out there, it's also within you. Thank you, everybody, so much. We will talk to you all on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for tuning in with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow to receive notifications when new content is made available. A Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure is looking to talk with ufologists, researchers, investigators, contactees, abductees, channelers, and more for upcoming shows. Or if you have stories, photos, videos, questions, suggestions, or comments, please contact us through Messenger or email us at paranomalypodcast@gmail.com. You can also visit us at paranomalypodcast.com for more content and information, including all our social links. I thank you again for watching or listening, and we hope to see you on the next episode of Paranomaly Beyond Disclosure.